You probably know how Canadians and British people are very similar, but how are we different? Hi everyone, it's me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alanna and I'm a Canadian, but I have been living here in the UK for the past 6 years. And on today's video, I'm going to share 8 ways that British people and Canadians are totally different. If you like this video and you want to watch more videos on what it's really like to be a foreigner in the UK, please consider subscribing. But without further ado, let's go. Now, obviously, there is further ado because it's Adventures in Naps, and that's what I do. We are going to be talking in generalizations, obviously. All right, if that upsets you, please just go someplace else, okay? Please and thank you. Number 1, we have languages. Now, Canada, while predominantly English speaking, as the UK is predominantly English speaking, Canada does have 2 official languages. We kind of forget sometimes, but it is a English and French speaking country. You may even find yourself in certain parts of Canada where French is the predominantly spoken language. Other parts, you may hear none of it, but none of it, get it? That's a place in Canada. Never mind. We legally have to have English and French on everything, so you're gonna see signs in French and English. Packaging is a big one, and it's one you see day to day. So on one side will be the English side and the other side will be the French side. To work in the Canadian government, in like a political governmental type position, you have to be bilingual. So it is pretty important. Even if your day-to-day life you may not hear French being spoken, it is still an official language. It's very important and something that makes Canada a bit different to the UK. Number 2 on how Canadians and Brits are different are sports. Yay! Now, I don't often talk about sport because I don't really care, to be honest. I'm not a sport kind of person, but it is something that really changes between Brits and Canadians. Changes isn't a good word. It's something that's different, all right? It's something that's different. So here in the UK, I would say the most popular sports are football, aka soccer, football, cricket, rugby. I'd say those are like the predominant popular sports here in the UK, whereas in Canada, I would say hockey, baseball, basketball, and American football, if we're gonna be on, like, you know, Canadian American football. That one's kind of confusing, but you know what I mean. So as a Canadian, I have been very lucky that I've been to 1 hockey game. I don't really care about hockey. There, I said it. A couple professional basketball games and a whole lot of professional baseball games. Go Jays. Anybody out there? Go Blue Jays. But sport is something that's quite different between the 2 places. Next level down, I would say curling for Canada. The UK, I'd say perhaps tennis. I'm not gonna say darts because it's not a sport, okay? And you can't convince me otherwise. Oh, hi there, it's me again. I'm just here really quickly to say, if you want to support me directly while getting exclusive content, please come check me out on Patreon. I'm really proud of the content I post there. Plus we have like a chat room, we've got live streams. I also send out postcards, all sorts of exclusive stuff. And it is super helpful for keeping Adventures in Apps going when YouTube, sometimes the YouTube algorithm, I don't know, we have a complicated relationship. But if you are interested in extra content, supporting me directly, please consider checking me out on Patreon. I gotta go now because this is heavy. I am not very strong. Okay, I'm leaving now. Thanks for watching. Bye. Another thing that I have found personally where Brits and Canadians differ are, I find that Brits tend to be more class conscious than anything I've experienced in Canada. And I do think that accents kind of play a role in this, in that here in the UK, there are so many accents. So many. You travel just to the next village and people can have a different accent. So in that way, I find that it's much easier for people to pinpoint where you're from and then potentially make a generalization about you in terms of class. So perhaps you hear someone speak and you're like, oh, I know where that's from. I know where they're from. Do you know what I mean? Whereas in Canada, for the most part, as a Canadian, I would have a really hard time telling Canadian accents apart from each other. Excluding the weird ones, like anybody in Quebec or like French speaking is gonna sound a bit different, and Newfies. Newfies sound Irish, so let's not include them. But for many of the provinces, I don't think there is a really definitively different accent. So as a Canadian, it's really hard to pinpoint where people are from or what class they might be associated with, because our accents really don't give you any extra information about that person. I guess this is kind of like point 3 and 3A. Not only do I find Brits to be more class conscious than Canadians, Brits on average have just a huge variety of accents compared to Canadians. I read online somewhere something like you can fit just England into Ontario, where I'm from, 8 times. And yet in Ontario, I would not be able to tell people's accents where they live in Ontario. Even though it's 8 times bigger than England, the accent doesn't really change that much. So defining people's class based on accent is just kind of impossible. Anyway, wow, that was kind of like long-winded. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, let's move on. Now, both British people and Canadians, I think, are known for being extremely polite. Politeness is something that's very integral to culture in both places, but I find Brits tend to be more sarcastic, whereas Canadians tend to be more passive-aggressive. And I also think majority of Canadians do not like conflict, so being passive-aggressive kind of plays into that. But if you're looking for sarcasm, the Brits have you beat. The Brits do sarcasm like nobody else. Number 5. I don't know how many numbers. I think we're on 5. Number 5-ish. I find typically that while Brits are very polite and very friendly, they can be perhaps a little bit suspicious of people when they first meet them. You know, you gotta have to suss them out a little bit. Whereas I find generally most Canadians don't really have that filter. They're very polite and friendly, and they just dive right in to a new person. To the point where I actually had culture shock when I went back to Ontario. The amount of strangers talking to me, and not just like, you know, small talk or small chat or whatever. It's small talk, isn't it? Not just small talk, but Canadians actually like asking how I truly was, or what I was doing or getting up to, or like what are my plans for life. Like they almost just dive right into this really friendly, welcoming, almost extremely personal relationship with a stranger. Whereas Brits, I find, while they are polite and that is very much part of culture and they are friendly, I think Brits can be a little bit more suspicious of new people perhaps, where Canadians are like, come on over to my house, I don't even know you. Number 6, on ways that Canadians and Brits are different. This one is maybe a bit more niche. Way back when I was a reporter, I know, it feels like a million years ago. And I have noticed that Canadian media, even like tabloid media, is pretty mild, almost boring compared to perhaps some British media and British tabloids. I think Brits can agree. The tabloids over here sometimes are just absolutely unbelievable. But someone who comes from media, I just noticed that the media in the UK, not all of it, of course, but certainly leaning into the tabloids can be just unbelievable and very exaggerated and over the top, whereas Canadian media tends to just be pretty neutral, boring, mild. I'm looking at you, Daily Mail. Number 7, I think, on our list of ways Brits and Canadians are very different, I'm gonna say Sunday roast. Now, again, not everybody, please don't be mad, not everybody, but I do know quite a few British people who will go back home for a Sunday roast. They may not even have Sunday roast. It may be a different meal completely, But there is some level of frequency of going home and having a big meal with their family. And to be honest, I find that much less common in Canada. Now, Canadians typically, we don't have Sunday roast or like a big family meal once a week or on Sundays, or you know what I mean? Like, that's not really a thing. The only time that Canadians typically have a big family meal would be like Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving, where you have some kind of roast with your family. But in terms of a weekly Sunday roast, really not a thing. And I also find that I think Canadians go home less. And maybe that's a cultural thing. Maybe that's a geography thing. Because Canada is so much bigger, if you move away a few hours, which, you know, is pretty common, going home for a weekly dinner is kind of impossible. Where here in the UK, even if you move towns and cities away, it's not nearly as far. You can only go so far in the UK, you know what I mean? But I do find that Sunday roast is just something that's a little bit different. But wow, I could really go for a Yorkshire pudding right about now. Number 8 on ways that Canadians and Brits are very different is banter. Now, banter, from my experience, is very intertwined into British culture. And if you come from a country where banter isn't necessarily a thing, it can actually be quite alarming when you hear it happening. Now, when I first moved to the UK, so many years ago, I first worked in a office, and it was like an open plan office. There was a whole bunch of us in there, and you'd overhear conversations, you'd hear people talking to each other, and you would hear the banter. And some of the banter was so intense. I just didn't know what to make of it. Whereas in Canada, of course, there are banter among friends and family, you know, and making fun of siblings or parents or whatever, but it's way more subdued. It's way less intense, and it's much less mean sounding. Have you ever heard that phrase where if a British person is really polite to you, it means they hate you, but if they call you a word that I can't say on YouTube, it means you're their best friend. So I do find that banter is much more prevalent in the UK, and it's much more intense than what you would ever see in Canada. And if you are a foreigner here in the UK like myself, banter sometimes takes a little bit of time getting used to, because you think, oh my God, that person is being so mean. They're being so mean to that other person, when in fact they're probably best friends. It just takes some time to get used to it. So those are 8 ways that Brits and Canadians are very different. If you have a difference, if you want to add, please leave a comment, or just leave a comment anyways, because that's really helpful. I just want to give a little shout out to the channel Lost in the Pond. I saw that they did a video how Brits and Americans are different. I thought, what a fabulous idea. So thank you so much for the inspiration. If you'd like to check out more videos about British culture or a foreigner's perspective on British culture, make sure to check out my channel. I got a whole playlist about my life here in the UK. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, bye!